Mic'd Up Podcast, hosted by Dr. Mike Miller and Kobe Duran of Central Baptist Church in Jacksonville, Texas, is a series of conversations about issues that matter. For people who have real questions and doubts, it covers topics of faith, theology, and philosophy in ways that are easy to understand. Ultimately, Mic'd Up is a podcast with a couple of guys having conversations about the conversations you are having. Mic'd Up is produced by Al Lambert Jr. at Mic'd Up Studios in Jacksonville, Texas.
Still one of my favorite shows I've seen. One season. They only produced one season. I don't think they're going to do any more. Devs.
Dude.
You put me onto that. I think you did.
Man, but isn't it like on the last episode, now you got to go watch all of the other ones again?
Man.
Because what just is happening?
Dude,
right
I watched that during the lockdowns in 2020.
Yeah.
And so I was what do they call it? Binging. I was binging it.
Raised a lot of philosophical questions.
Dude, it did. It raised some really good philosophical questions. It was great.
It was really good.
It was so good. You got to see who's the guy? Ron Swanson. What is his name? Nick Offerman. Is that his name?
Yeah.
You got to see him in a real serious role, kind of a devious role.
Yeah.
That was a great. I'm not going to tell anybody, but if you are listening right now, I think it's on like Hulu maybe. But
you can find it.
Go watch you some Devs. DEVS.
Yep.
Devs. One season. I think it's like 8 episodes. Do yourself a favor.
Yep, it's really good.
You ready to get going?
Might as well.
I think now is as good a time as any.
Is it as good? Maybe it's a better time.
It is a better time than any
it's the best
that will
time.
present itself to us.
All right.
Folks, welcome to the Mic'd Up Podcast.
This is it.
Where we have the conversations.
About the conversations you are having.
And once again, we nailed it. We're just on top of things.
Nailed it.
So, I've got another quasi-political.
Oh, good grief.
Dude, here's the deal.
You're killing me.
Here's the deal. Now, this conversation.
Look, I'm dying right now.
This,
you're killing me.
I know. Yeah, I'm sorry. I've got one. I want to talk to today's conversation. This is kind of how I want to approach it. I go to you from time to time, maybe once every 5 years, asking for advice,
and then rejecting it after I get it.
And then rejecting it. So we've been together 8 years. So once every 5, I've gone to you one time for. No, I'm just kidding. I go to you for advice. You're my pastor. You're my boss, but you're also my pastor. And there's a conversation that I have seen come up a lot, and it's getting hotter. And I've been trying to pinpoint, okay, where does all this go back to? Because right now there is I'll say this, at the very least, I feel like there's some boundaries on how we can describe this. At the very least, there is some potential for a real flight away from evangelical Christianity. Okay. On the other side of the spectrum, there is currently a flight away from evangelical Christianity. You see in some social media spheres the phrase ex-evangelicals. Have you been seeing that?
Oh, yeah. I read the testimonies of some of these ex-evangelicals,
and you have some people who, quote, cross the Tiber into Roman Catholicism.
That one I can't conceive.
You have people that go east into the Eastern Orthodoxy. You have people that are going into, and so there just seems to be, like I said, I haven't seen the stats on it, but it's popular enough now that you have the phrase ex-evangelicals. Yeah. You have people that are commenting on this, talking about it. Mm-hmm. So, like I said, I think the boundary is least there is potential for this rapid movement away from evangelicalism at maybe on the extreme side, it's already happening.
Okay.
So I've started trying to process why is this happening, and I think that, by the way, there's probably a multitude of reasons.
Yeah.
I don't think it's ever just one thing.
I have some opinions on it, as I'm sure you do.
Yeah. I have one opinion though that has to deal with kind of the political season that we're in.
Okay. I do too.
I think that people have And I have like so many questions involved with this too. So we might be here a while, or we might not. You might just have some yes or no answers. Who knows?
Yes.
I think that in 2020 in particular, I would just even say maybe dating back to 2016, but we have had 8 years of very prominent evangelical figures that have jumped on the Donald Trump train in ways that I think, like, I don't have a problem with somebody who votes for Donald Trump, but the way that some evangelical figures have jumped on his bandwagon could be potentially sinful.
Well, yeah, and I want to be very careful about this. So I'm not going to criticize anybody for the way they vote.
No,
ever.
Of course not.
In fact, I hate this. Well, you can't vote this way and be a Christian.
Yes.
Or if you vote this way, you're not a Christian. That is nonsense. There is one thing that makes you a Christian and one thing only, and that is your faith in Jesus Christ.
That's right.
And when we start putting anything else on it, we're making a law that is not biblical.
Yeah.
And I would even say, let's say that voting for a particular candidate versus another candidate would be a violation of even Christian principles. I'm not saying it is right now, but let's just say that. I would even say you can still be a Christian and be in error.
Oh man, I do that every day.
Right, but the people that say that don't think you can. And typically the people that say that have a lot of other criteria. Well, a true Christian does this, and this, exactly the way I do it.
Oh, there's a logical fallacy associated with that. The no true Scotsman.
Yeah,
no true
right.
Christian
No
would
true
vote.
Christian.
And I think that this is just my personal opinion. I think, I kind of like us to approach the conversation this way. I think that in 2016, there were Christians who voted for Donald Trump. I think there was Christians who voted for Hillary Clinton. I think that there's Christians who voted for some third-party candidate or some write-in candidate. I think the exact same thing is true.
And there were Christians that stayed home on election day.
And there was Christians who stayed home. I think that there was Christians who voted for Joe Biden, Donald Trump. I think there was Christians who stayed home, all that. And I think that in 2024, we're going to see the exact same thing.
Yeah.
I don't think that like...
Yeah, so here's the issue that... Here's the way I see what you're talking about, and let me kind of explain that. Like, again, support whatever candidate you want. I'm not going to criticize you for that, okay? I'm just not. That's not going to be a litmus test for friendship or for fellowship for me, all right? But the problem was, it goes back when Bill Clinton had a sexual encounter with an intern.
Right.
What we heard from, and I'm going to separate this, and I don't mean to be racist here, but I think nobody would deny this reality, white evangelicals versus black evangelicals, because preponderance of black evangelicals vote for the Democrat.
Yeah.
The preponderance of white evangelicals vote for the
And that's
Republican.
just a statistical fact.
Yes. So there's no opinion in that.
Yeah.
That's just the way it is. What we heard is character matters. One of the lines I kept hearing is, a man who will lie to his wife will lie to the country.
Yeah.
You can't trust a man. You can't vote for a man. You can't elect a man who would cheat on his wife, period. Character matters. Mm-hmm. Then we have a candidate who, it's no secret, has cheated on his wife multiple times, who has made remarks about women that are just beyond the pale.
Right.
I mean, there is no excuse. And like famous, like he makes a remark about how he says, when you're famous, you can sexually assault women by grabbing them in certain places. I'm not going to repeat what he said.
Yeah.
And it's okay. They let you do it.
Mm-hmm.
And when I hear famous evangelical pastors go, that's just locker room banter. That was the phrase we heard.
Yeah.
I'm thinking, before I was a Christian, I didn't talk about women like that.
Well,
my dad would have slapped me upside the head.
Yeah, he would have. My dad would have.
He heard me saying something like that.
Well, and you also you heard from some evangelicals that, but you also heard from some evangelicals, well, he's repented of that. And it's like, well, where is the evidence of that repentance?
Right. But here's the thing. The story is now, I don't think anybody's even saying he repented. I mean, that was sort of the, hey, he's a new Christian.
I heard some. There was some that were saying
nowadays, even a lot of the people back then are. So the line back with Clinton was character matters, and the other side was saying, we're not electing a pastor-in-chief. And now what's interesting is literally some of the exact same people who with Clinton were saying character matters are now literally using the line, we're not electing a pastor in chief.
Yeah.
And what we're seeing is, and they're not even, it'd be one thing if they came back and said, look, back with Clinton, I was wrong.
Yeah.
I took a stand I shouldn't have taken.
Right.
And here's why I believe I was wrong then, and I believe it's okay to support somebody with these character issues today. They're not doing that. And so what the watching world is seeing is hypocrisy. Mm-hmm. It's just an abject, if character mattered back then, does it matter today? Right. And usually what I get is, well, I'm not, and the thing I'm hearing today is I'm not voting for the man, I'm voting for the platform. I get that.
Okay, and I want to interject something real fast, just for our listeners too, because you get that, I get that. Like, I think that we have established, like, if you're going to the booth, the voting booth, soon, very soon, it's coming up very quick. Yeah. And you're just like, listen, I'm going to vote for the person that has the best policies to lead our country. Right. Hey, go do that. No, this is not a knock on. Right. I hope that nobody hears this as like, hey, don't go vote for Donald Trump, or don't do it. Like, that's not. Right. He's a topic of conversation for this particular conversation, but nobody's saying vote for him, don't vote for him. We're simply saying, hey, what? And I got a question coming up, so I want to continue. I just want to interject with that.
Well, so what I'm saying is a lot of like kids my age, or the kids the age of my kids, grew up seeing this mantra, character matters, character matters, character matters. Yeah, yeah. Now they're adults and their parents are saying character doesn't matter. Mm. Yeah. We're not electing a pastor in chief. And rightly or wrongly, the evangelical church is viewed by the world as being the MAGA church.
Okay, so here's where my question comes in. Because I legitimately, at this point in time, I go back and forth on this question. Is the term evangelical redeemable at this point in time? That's my starting question.
I don't know the answer to that.
Oh man, so you feel some tension there too?
It may be lost. I find that I'm careful about the circles I use that I'm in when I use the word. Yeah. And by the way, So I'm not the guy that just throws all the media under the bus. I'm not, because I depend on the media to inform me about things. I think we need to be discerning about it. Yeah. And I do think that there are some media outlets and some media personalities that can't be trusted, but I think there are the good ones out there too. Right. But the media has hyped this up. Like, you come to Central Baptist Church, we're not a MAGA church.
Right. Yeah. We never talk about it.
We don't do politics.
We don't do politics.
Now, members do, and we probably have some members who love Donald Trump. We probably have some members that hate Donald Trump. But it's not what we're known for. That is just, it's like a non-issue for Central Baptist Church. That's right. And frankly, the circles I run in with pastors, same way.
Man, that's awesome. Praise God for that.
But there are some big name pastors out there.
Yes.
That they're the ones that are in the news. Mm. And we all get lumped in with that. Right. And so if for example, there are people that hear, oh, you're a Southern Baptist, you don't believe character matters, you love Donald Trump, right? And again, I'm not going to speak for or against Donald Trump, but the perception is that, just like the perception is, oh, you're a black Christian, you must love Kamala Harris, right? Yeah. Whether that's true or not. Right. Because I know black Christians who don't love Kamala Harris. And then now we've got another thing that's just kind of blowing the lid off of stuff. There's this organization that is growing out there called Evangelicals for Harris.
Oh, okay. Interesting.
Yeah, and I'm seeing a lot from them. And so now the evangelical church had this reputation, like, we're going to be for, pro-life, for conservatism, for all that kind of stuff. Mm-hmm. Now you got evangelicals for Harris. So there's just no consistency anywhere. And so what I would respond to that is, don't look for consistency. Don't define who we are by how we vote.
Yeah. So
if we could be once again redefined for what we believe, that would be awesome.
Yeah, and I think it's just going to be hard for us to be defined that way. So I guess my question would be this right here, and this is where I've gone back and forth on the term evangelical. Number one, it's always convenient to be able to characterize yourself in a larger context.
It is.
Somebody comes and says, "Hey, what is your church? Kind of just explain your church in a nutshell." Well, we're a Baptist church. Right now our state convention is Texas Baptist, our national convention Southern Baptist. We fit into the greater kind of evangelical circles, things of that nature. Like it's nice to be able to say, "Hey, these are some ways that you can kind of understand." But the term has gotten so polarized. It's gotten so there's so much vitriol that's thrown out to it. I kind of question. Okay, well, do I want to be identified as an evangelical?
Yeah, that's why I say it depends on the circles that I'm in.
That you put, okay.
Yeah, because and not only that, but evangelical has gotten so. So, are you familiar with David Bebbington and the Bebbington
the quadrilateral? Yeah.
I just pulled it up because I didn't want to forget one. So, Bebbington's quadrilateral was: here are the 4 marks of evangelicals.
Yeah.
Biblicism, in other words, we focus on the Bible. We believe it is our source of truth.
Right.
Crucicentrism, a focus on the atoning work of Christ.
Can we go back to the biblicism real fast?
Biblicism.
So the way I understand it, correct me if I'm wrong, we focus on the study of Scripture, and the Scripture is our guide, in contrast to what you would see potentially with, say, Eastern Orthodoxy, Roman Catholicism, that says, hey, Bible plus tradition is where
the church is the supreme authority.
Yeah.
Or liberal Christianity, it says Bible's just a good source book for us. So
Right.
It is the only authority, and it's not just the supreme authority, but it is our only authority.
Yeah. Now we use tradition to help us interpret tough passages at times.
Sure we do. Yeah.
But we don't. But we don't
how
have
has
to
this
stick.
been interpreted for
Yeah,
2,000 years?
right, yeah.
That's right. Crucicentrism is a focus on the atoning work of the cross. In other words, we're going to preach the gospel. We believe the gospel is our central message.
Yeah.
Conversionism, a belief that everyone needs to be converted.
Yes.
And then finally, activism, the belief that the gospel has to be expressed. So we should all be out there. I mean, this is the missions effort. We should be proclaiming the gospel. We should be doing good works. And so that would set us apart from the mainline denominations. But evangelicalism now contains such a hodgepodge, like, you lump, the charismatic movement and even the prosperity gospel movement, and all of this has been lumped in there.
Yeah.
And then we've become identified more as a voting block,
Right. Yeah.
than a theological branch,
Right.
so to speak.
Right.
That the term is becoming meaningless to identify who we are doctrinally. So when I'm with a group of theologians, when I'm in an academic setting, we use the term evangelical, and everybody knows what we're talking about.
Right.
Right.
Because we're not talking about voting blocks when you're in that setting. When
That's
you're
exactly right.
what is it? Oh gosh, the evangelical
Theological Society. I'm a member.
Yeah.
I just got my journal for the Journal for the American Theological Society. I just got it in the mail yesterday.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, we know what we're talking about. But if you go out and you're just talking to somebody in the world and you say, yeah, I'm an evangelical Christian, their first thought is not, oh, so you believe the Bible, you believe it, people need to be converted. Their thought is, oh, so you support Donald Trump.
Mm-hmm. Right.
And again, I'm not knocking, don't hear me doing that. But what I'm
that's
saying
how it's been
is,
identified.
But that's not who we are.
Right.
But some Christians, by the way, I saw an interesting study a while back, I wish I could find this, that showed that the people most, like the strongest supporters for Donald Trump are non-churchgoers.
Okay.
So like evangelical Christians that go to church, statistically are going to vote more Republican than Democrat.
Okay.
But the people that are like the most ardent, adamant, like they're going to wear the MAGA hats and the T-shirts and stuff like that, they would identify as evangelical Christians, but they don't actually affiliate with a local church.
With evangelical churches, okay.
Yeah.
That's interesting. So let me say from a pastoral perspective, here I am. I'm a Christian man in my 30s, and I'm on social media. I don't have a strong presence, but I'm on social media, so I see what people are saying. I'm talking with other people in their 30s. I'm trying to be as there's this like very thin line with like cultural relevance when it comes to sharing the gospel, right? Like we can't cross into these sinful parts of our cultural context to be relevant to share the gospel. But there also is parts where we say, hey, if I use this lingo, if I use this description or whatever, my appeal to someone might be more relatable.
Yeah.
And so if I'm in my 30s, I am in my 30s. Here I am in my 30s, and you're my pastor, and I said, hey, it is not going to do me any good to identify with evangelical Christianity. Pastor Mike, can I just drop that? Like, if somebody asks me if I'm an evangelical, can I just tell them no? What would you say to?
Here would be my response. I would say if somebody says, "Are you an evangelical Christian?" I'd say, "Well, what do you mean by that?"
Okay, good. That's great advice.
Yeah. Well, this and this and this. Then no, I'm definitely not that.
Okay. Yeah.
And you could even explain, I'm what evangelical Christians used to be, but no, I reject this and I reject that too, so I'm right there with you. Because I think saying no would not be honest, because doctrinally you are still in that category of evangelical Christian.
I fall in that Bebbington quadrilateral.
But I would tell you, dropping that term, sure, drop the term. The Bible doesn't tell you need to be identified by that term, so it's just a term we invented to help articulate who we are.
And I guess the question would more mean, would I be a person of integrity if I were to drop that term? Because that's one of those things that I see people doing in an attempt to be culturally relevant.
Let me put it another way, because this is a discussion we've had as Southern Baptists. So why would anybody in North Dakota, New Hampshire, Seattle, Washington want to join a Southern Baptist church? So the question that we wrestle with today, and I mean, this is very relevant. So I'm going to take it into, I'm going to take it away from the politics.
It took me way too long to.
Sorry.
I was like, wait a minute, what are you talking about? Those are northern states. Gears.
Yeah.
That's what I was struggling. I was like, wait, where's he going? What's
Al, give me a map. I got to show Kobe where these are.
Okay. Yeah, we might need to start that one over.
So anyway, the idea is, if I want to go plant a church in Portland, Oregon, or Boston,
yes,
do I want to say we are so and so Baptist church? And some would say, well, if you don't, you're being dishonest. You're trying to hide it.
Okay.
And I would say you're not required in the Bible to call yourself a Baptist church.
Yeah. Yeah.
You're not required to name your church anything. What was the church in Philippi called? Oh, the church is in Philippi.
Yeah.
Right? The church is in Colossae. Right. So I don't think that's a biblical requirement. I do think if you try to hide that or deny it, then it's a problem.
Like if you have affiliation with, say, the Southern Baptist Convention, it's not in your name, but they come and say, hey, are you affiliated with the Southern Baptist Convention?
We are.
Yeah, you need to be forward with that.
Or like in your membership process, you let that know on your website. Who we are. We are a part of the Southern Baptist Convention. Yeah. This is our statement of faith, whatever. But do I think you need to put it on your sign? I don't. And there are people who have said, well, if you don't, you're just being dishonest. That's a lack of integrity. And I disagree with that.
Yeah, I disagree with that
What
too.
I'm doing is saying, like Paul, when he goes to Athens and he goes to the Areopagus, he doesn't lead with, let's talk about the resurrection of Christ.
Right.
He leads with, I see you're very religious.
Yeah.
I noticed an altar to an unknown God. I'd like to tell you about it.
Yeah.
And then he gets to the resurrection after he makes his case.
Yeah.
So what's he doing? He is not watering down his message, but he is being culturally relevant in how he communicates that. He's being I want to say culturally sensitive to how he communicates that. Now, in deep East Texas, having Baptist on your church name can actually be a benefit
Yeah.
Because in East Texas, they're a Baptist church.
We live in the Bible Belt.
Or they may go to this church and go, well, I wonder what kind of church is that?
Right.
Why didn't they just say so?
100%,
right?
because it helps people identify it if they know anything about Baptist
I'm not
churches.
saying you have to use Baptist, but I don't think it hurts you in our context.
And in some places it'd be helpful.
It could, and it could torpedo you in some places.
Yeah, it could.
I mean, you're not even going to get a start if you go stay Baptist.
I've seen like on our Jacksonville Facebook page, like where some people come into town and they say, "Hey guys, I'm looking for a new church. I'm looking for a Baptist church." I've also seen people that are like, "I don't want a Baptist church," and it's like, okay, well, hey, then that if you come to Central, you're not going to get what you're looking for.
Yeah, we're not going to do a bait and switch on you.
Or you know that, hey, like this is exactly. Yeah. But we're in the Bible Belt where religion in general, especially Christianity, is a lot more. I don't know what the word is. It's certainly accepted. I was
even talking to somebody one time that was a member of a mega church that didn't have Baptists and was bad-mouthing the Southern Baptist Convention. And, I'd never go to a Baptist church. And I said, you go to a Southern Baptist church. No, I don't. I said, yeah, your church is a part of the Southern Baptist Convention. What? Yeah, and so maybe your preconceptions about Southern Baptists are off.
Yeah.
Because that's another thing about being a Southern Baptist or being an evangelical. We're not all the same.
Well, and this kind of plays into even just how some Christians just talk about Christianity. I pushed back on this hard, and I was kind of seen, not as an outcast, like people were trying to cast me aside, but certainly I was in the vast minority on this particular issue. But in 2011, I think it was 2011, there was a video that was produced that just, meteoric on YouTube. It was from a guy, Jonathan something, young guy, probably close to the college age. The video was Why I Hate Religion But Love Jesus. I'm pretty sure that's do you remember that video?
Oh, yeah.
Mm-hmm. I hated it. Mm-hmm. I hated it. And here's why. We took a word
that's actually in the Bible.
And it's a great word, religion. Go look up the definition. Christianity is a religion. And we
go to church, you're doing something religious. You take the Lord's Supper, you're doing something religious. You sing hymns, you're doing something religious.
We have dogma. We're part of a religious institution.
Right.
And so we tried to be culturally relevant by eliminating a great word that most accurately describes Christianity and then spinning it into this
And in
terrible
fairness, I think the point trying to get across is if you're trying to be saved by religion, it's going to fail you, which is true.
It's 100. Yes, that's 100% true, and I appreciate that he was trying to convey that. I did not appreciate that he and my entire generation, as a result of that, religion is bad. Yeah. No, religion is a fantastic thing. There are going to be days where you wake up and you just don't want to do the Christian thing. You know what? You go do it anyways.
That's right.
That's religion. That's dogma. Right. That's discipline.
Yeah.
And so I've been wrestling with the whole evangelical thing because I'm like, okay, is that a similar situation? Are we in this deal where it's like, hey, for me to continue to identify as a evangelical, I would lose people immediately. There's some people in my generation that the minute I say, hey, I'm an evangelical, I'm done.
Right.
I'm done. But am I being honest? And so I think that you've given us some great feedback here about how to work through that.
If somebody says, are you an evangelical? Again, I would just say, well, it depends on what you mean by that.
Yeah. Let me ask you, if somebody huge in evangelical life, a very popular author who's younger, he's not young, but he's younger, John Mark Comer, he's an evangelical. And he's got a major sway on younger evangelicals. Mm-hmm. If he came out and said, guys, evangelicalism or just the evangelical brand, it's like irredeemable. Let's call ourselves blank.
They do it in a heartbeat, right?
Yeah. Do what?
They do it in a heartbeat, right?
They do it in a heartbeat. What would you say to that? Would you say, yeah, I'll get on board with that? Or would you say...
Well, I think it depends on the term. If I would agree, that is an adequate term to describe who we are, then let's...
I don't like ex-evangelicals.
No, because ex-evangelicals are usually people that they speak very, very negatively about the evangelical church.
Yeah.
And that's another conversation because what it is, they saw some hypocrisy when they were growing up or they were part of that purity culture or something like that.
Yeah.
And the sad thing to me is that they also show no appreciation for some of the good things they got out of it.
Well,
they're throwing everything out.
One of my biggest issues with the people who have adopted that moniker is if you go and you take them back to the quadrilateral,
they would agree with them.
Agree with all four of them. So I'm just like, okay,
right.
so I don't like that term.
I think it's I think it's an unhelpful term.
It's an unhelpful term. Now, if you're the guy who crossed the Tiber, so to speak, into Roman Catholicism or went east in the Eastern Order, that's probably not a terrible term for you because there are things that you have abandoned in the quadrilateral.
That's exactly right.
But for a lot of these people, they're like, I'm an evangelical. It's like, dude, you're still in the box.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
So, anyways, okay. Well, that's good. I appreciate that you're not approaching this in a dogmatic way where you're like, oh, yeah, this is an irredeemable, or no, we got to keep it.
I don't approach a lot of things like that. You know, there's a very few things I would put in that box that you can't stray from this.
Yeah.
You know, the rest of it, I do want to be culturally sensitive. I think, Paul says, I became all things to all people so that I might win some.
Yeah.
And why wouldn't we do the same thing?
Right.
When I pastored in Maryland, I had to interact with people a lot differently. And here's a good example. I live in East Texas. Asking somebody if they're a Christian is completely different than living in New Orleans, where I lived for 8 years, and asking somebody 100%. If they're a Christian. And it's way different than. So I lived in Maryland, which was only about 20% churched, and those that went to church, the majority of them went to churches that were not evangelical.
Yeah.
And we had an Episcopal diocese in our town. We had a big Roman Catholic church in our town. We had a big mainline, very liberal, theologically liberal Methodist church in our town. And so, you ask somebody, are you a Christian? No. Oh, well, good. You knew where you stood. Here in East Texas, everybody's going to say yes, whether they really are or not.
There might be the few, right?
Yeah, there's going to be a few. I mean, I've got an atheist guy that in the community that I've talked to a lot, but I mean, you're going to find people that, well, yeah, I'm not a Muslim. That's basically their idea. So they're going to self-identify as evangelicals without knowing, or as Christians without really knowing what it means to be a Christian.
Right.
In New Orleans, really different population because it's 78% Catholic.
Right.
And I was surprised to learn, and this is, if you're a Catholic and you're listening to this, you're going to push back on it. Fine, push back because I'm not going to disagree with you. I'm just telling you my experience in New Orleans.
Yeah.
One of the most common answers I got when I'd say, are you a Christian, was no, I'm a Catholic.
I have actually experienced some of that in Texas.
Yeah.
In some.
Now the Pope wouldn't be happy with that answer,
right?
Because officially they would call themselves Christians, right? But they saw Christians as evangelicals.
Right. You see, I had a student at one time here at Central that became a Christian. He grew up Catholic, but had never really embraced Catholicism, and did end up converting, gave his life to Jesus one night, and it was awesome. And when he went home to tell his family about it, they said, and his family, by the way, devout Catholic. And when he went home and told them, they said, "Why would you become a Christian? Why would you do that?" Yeah. And I told him, I was like, brother, So
I think what we need to do is we need to learn our culture. We've got to exegete our culture.
Yeah.
Where am I? What is the best way to communicate the
that's
gospel
a good
in
word.
this context?
That's a good word.
And we strayed a lot from this whole, the politics. But a lot of, this is all just connected with I would say if using the descriptor evangelical in the community is going to harm my witness, then I won't use it.
Yeah.
Now, if you say, oh, well, if you talk about the resurrection and that harms your witness, are you going to stop? No, because that's Bible. So no.
Yeah, those are apples and oranges there.
I found that increasingly more today, when people start asking me questions, it's most helpful for me to say, can I just tell you what it is I believe instead of using a label? Because a lot of people go, well, are you this or are you that? And I go, can I just tell you what I believe? And you know what I do then? I just share the gospel.
Yeah.
And I say, now there's a lot of other things that even Christians are going to disagree on.
Right, yeah.
But the one thing we're going to agree on is this.
Right.
And so I want you to be a Christian, even if we disagree on some of these other things, because this is what it means to be a Christian.
Yeah.
So if you want to, in fact, if somebody wants to know how I'm voting, tough. I tell no one how
Yeah.
I'm voting. I discuss that with my family and maybe a few close friends, but nobody at our church knows how I'm going to vote.
Right.
Now, I think most could, have a fairly educated guess as to how I'm going to vote.
Well, I think that you have made yourself to where your church will know what policies are most important to you.
Right.
And if they want to infer a candidate based on those policies, then they can do that.
But in the past, I've had people say, well, it's obviously you're voting for the Republican. I've had people say it's obvious you're voting for the Democrat. I've had people say it's obvious you don't vote. All of these things are obvious, right?
And they can't all be true.
But I would also suggest to Christians, this is the way.
Yeah.
And I'm not trying to say, well, my way is the way, but I would say to Christians, if your support for a candidate is a roadblock to the gospel, burn it down.
Yeah.
In fact, I would say, I'll say to Christians, if today you're wearing a MAGA hat or an Evangelicals for Harris t-shirt,
Yeah.
and you go out in your community and you try to share the gospel, with some people, they're not going to listen to anything you have to say.
That's right.
Because of your affiliation.
That's exactly right.
So is it wrong to support a candidate? It is not wrong to support a candidate, but I will tell you this. Publicly, for me, what is more important than anything is the good news of Jesus, the gospel. And if there is something that is not right out of the Bible, that presents a stumbling. Now, the gospel's a stumbling block.
Yeah.
In Athens, when Paul was engaging with these people, he got to the resurrection, half of them left.
That's right.
But the other half said, hey, we
Come
want
back
to hear
tomorrow.
more about this. Come back tomorrow.
Yeah.
Okay, if you're offended by the resurrection, if you're offended by the crucifixion, whatever, if you're offended that there's only one way to salvation, I'm not dialing that back at all.
Yeah.
But if you're offended because of how I vote, well, let's just take that off the table.
Right.
I'm not going to wear a t-shirt. I'm not going to put a sticker on my car. I'm not going to do any of that if it's a stumbling block or a roadblock to the gospel.
Yeah.
Why
Or
would I?
even with the term evangelical, right?
And if that is a stumbling block, man, I'll never, Paul says, if eating meat causes someone to stumble, I'll never eat meat again.
Dude, and that's a
big one.
That's
and
a big one.
He had, as
Cows
far
are
as I know,
delicious.
he'd never even had bacon,
God.
right? And so
Maybe that's why he was so intense all
So
the time.
for me, if being political causes my brother to stumble, I will never be political again. If using a term evangelical causes my brother to stumble, I will never use that term again. Why would I? What's my priority?
Right.
Well, aren't you worried about America? Yeah. I don't like the way things are going.
There's things I'm more worried about, though.
But what I'm more worried about is people going to hell.
Yeah, there's some eternal consequences.
And if I can persuade them to vote like I do, I hadn't gotten them an inch closer to heaven.
That's right. Well, that's a good word. I love what you said about asking. If somebody says, "Hey, are you a evangelical?" Asking them, what do they mean?
Mm-hmm.
I love the approach there, because that is something. I don't know that your generation of Christians is probably facing as much backlash on this as, say, my generation.
No, it's not.
Labels are a big thing for my generation, and I don't.
No, I will tell you though, for my generation is probably the one most likely to use how you vote as a test for your salvation.
Yeah, that's unfortunate.
And those are the people I hear it the most from.
Yeah. We have acknowledged on this podcast that there are some platforms that political leaders use that are evil, but we're not going to sit here and say. I don't think that there has been a politician, at least in my voting lifetime, that I have been able to say I affirm every single thing that this person does.
Never. Absolutely. Here, I'll give you my one political endorsement.
Yeah.
Ronald Reagan.
See, and I can't tell you anything about
He's
it.
dead. He's not running for anything. But Ronald Reagan, I didn't agree with everything Ronald Reagan said, but I don't mind telling you that was my first vote.
Really?
Yeah, it was Ronald Reagan. And I don't care who knows it. I think, just a lot of his policies and all that, and not everything. But, I've said it before that there are a couple of things that are just beyond the pale for me. If you in any way endorse killing the unborn, that's a major issue for me. If you in any way endorse this chemically or physically castrating children, no, that's evil.
Yeah.
I mean, that's just awful.
Yeah.
And so there are some of those issues that for me rise, and some issues are more important than others.
Yeah.
Doesn't mean the others aren't important. They're not as,
But you and I both know Christians who have voted for candidates who actually affirm those things.
Well, and let's be honest. Both major party candidates right now at least support the abortion pill.
That's right. Yep.
What does a guy like me do with that?
Yeah, it puts you in a hard spot, doesn't it?
It puts me in a hard spot.
Yeah.
And I understand one party has more extreme views about abortion than the other. I do get that. One party is all in on the transgender stuff and putting men in women's locker rooms and stuff, and the other's not. Again, I'm not endorsing. I'm not telling you how I'm going to vote. What I am just saying is that I'm not saying that they both have the same position on abortion, but you've got it's just getting harder and harder. And I think when it used to be a lot simpler, when in the Republican Party platform, for example, there was a pro-life position articulated, and now there's not.
They took that out at the RNC, didn't they?
Yeah. And so, this is going to become
very
increasingly a problem if there is no pro-life party.
That's right.
Then what do the single issue pro-life voters do?
I heard John Piper. This had to have been in 2020, but he had a podcast on one of his Ask Pastor John episodes. I just thought was very insightful because he essentially laid it out these are undeniable facts. When it comes to voting, you have essentially 4 options in America. You vote for the Democrat Party, option A, and these aren't in any particular order. You vote for the Republican Party, option B. You vote for somebody who's not in either one of those categories.
And isn't going to win.
And isn't going to win, option C, or you don't vote.
Right. Those are your 4 options.
Those are your 4 options. And, I just remember him talking about, the prayer that is needed. And, he also provided, I'm going to, golly, maybe this wasn't John Piper.
By the way, you can be a Christian and choose any of those 4 options.
You can be a Christian, and that was the thing that he kind of talked about. And he I think he did a good job. And man, maybe I'm the wrong theologian here. So if any of our listeners try to go look for that and they can't find it, I could be wrong. I'm coming on this with the spot, but I appreciated how in that podcast, he talked about the positives, kind of each. Where if you go and you vote,
it sounds more like Keller.
It might be Keller. You go and you vote option C, where it's like, I'm going to go write in somebody. Well, maybe you get enough people doing that, and hey, there's the potential that one of those parties is like, well, how do we go win those people now? What do I got to do to win those people? Yeah,
that's right.
You don't vote. Maybe you say,
how do we
okay,
get the person to go to the polls?
To go to the polls, and you don't break your conscience by so I don't know. There's some things there. The main topic of conversation today, and I think that you handled it so well. What do we do with this super amped up term, evangelical Christianity? And I think that you've given us some great pointers to go off of with that. So, anyways, that's all I've got. What do you got? You got anything else, man? Mike, tell us from your heart. You got something for us. You got 2 minutes from your heart right now.
Well, now
Go.
I'm put on the spot.
You have 1 minute left.
Then I guess I don't. Except that by the time this podcast's out, I expect I'll have a new grandbaby.
5th grandbaby.
5th grandbaby. We are on.
And you turned
watch right
a
now.
year older yesterday.
I am even older than I was the last time we
One step closer to Medicaid.
That's exactly right, and buddy. I'm not against that.
You're not against it. You're ready. You're ready for some Medicaid.
There are some advantages. The problem is you need it more the older you get.
Well, it's a big week for you. Birthday week. Got welcoming a new grandchild. So, anyways, glad that we were able to record. And folks, if you got any questions for us, if you have a topic of conversation that you would like us to address, by all means, reach out to us on social media.
Yep.
You can always reach out to Dr. Mike at ilike2preach@gmail.com.
Yes, you sure can. We'd
With
love
that
to hear
being-
from you.
With that being said,
Goodbye.
see ya.